talking about real estate scams. And unfortunately, 2024 was a record-breaking year for scam artists that want to take advantage of people in the real estate industry. So I want to go through a few of these common scams, and we'll share some of these on our socials. So again, make sure you're following at the Duncan Duo. If you missed this, share with a friend. If you want somebody to avoid having a financial loss and avoid a scam, just hit us up at the Duncan Duo, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. So one of the most common scams is someone renting a property that they do not own, and you go to meet them at the property. They advertise it as if they're the real estate agent or that as if they're the owner. You go to the property and you give them a deposit, and they say, oh, we're going to get back to you, and here's a lease. You sign a lease, you gave them your deposit, and then you follow up with them, and guess what? They vanish because they didn't own the property. They weren't a real estate agent. They had no representation of the property. So that is a very common real estate scam right now that people are falling for. The key is when they do this, when they take one of these properties, what they typically do is they take a property that's for sale, okay? And then they advertise it for rent. The reason they do that is because some of the algorithms make it a little bit harder for owner of the property to figure out what's going on or to be tipped off. Because the property is being shown, it's likely vacant, someone doesn't live there. So they take this vacant property, okay, that has a lockbox, okay? They somehow have lockbox access or get lockbox access or find out the code if it's a manual. They usually aren't doing this and letting people into homes that have electronic lockboxes. They're looking for homes with coded lockboxes. Then they show up, they meet you there, they tell you that they're the property manager or they're the realtor, and then they take money from you. So they're typically doing it on a vacant house that's listed for sale, and they're also posing and saying that it's for rent. They'll often lie and say they're a part of the real estate brokerage that's selling the property to try and get you to let your guard down. They'll present you with a fake lease, all this kind of stuff. Well, typically they have to do this really fast because they only have a few days before it's going to get caught. Someone's going to call into the real estate broker that has it listed for sale. Someone's going to tip off the owner. Someone's going to figure it out, or someone's going to smell scam from the person they're meeting with. They're either going to be suspicious. They're going to ask for a business card and the person doesn't have it. They're going to ask for their name and they're going to look them up and it's not the right person. They're going to find out they don't have a real estate license. They're going to look it up on tax rolls and find out that that's not the person that owns the property if they lied and said that that's what they did. So nonetheless, there's so much publicly information available that they only have a short period of time to try and scam someone. So what do they do to scam you if you're a renter? They put it at some unbelievable price for rent. Look, there's no such thing as a free lunch. If it looks too good to be true, it probably is. If the property should rent for $4,000 and they're advertising it for $1,300 a month, run. It's a scam. No landlord on earth is renting out their $4,000 a month property for $1,300, okay? If it looks too good to be true, it is. It's a scam, okay? So they have this small amount of time. So because of that, they have to make such a sensational offer to try and scam someone out of money before it gets caught and blows up in their face. So as a renter, the things that you can do, number one, you can vet the person. You can somehow find out if they are really a property manager. Can you verify their photo? Do they have a business card? Can you look up the owner and find out if that person that described themselves is the owner? But also trust your gut instinct. So those are all things you can do to prevent yourself from being taken advantage of. That is a very common scam in our real estate market right now. And again, it happens. We get calls all the time from people who are advertising our listings for rent. We weren't doing it. So be very, very cautious when you're handing over money to people, again, because that specific reason. You need to be able to look up the entity. Is it a registered entity? Is that person a licensed real estate agent? Certainly, they're pushing for cash, probably not a good sign, okay? So all those things are ways you can avoid that particular scam. Another really common scam is from people that wholesale properties. And when I say a scam, there are a lot of legitimate wholesalers that really truly explain what's going on. And then there are some others that are pretty scammy because there's not a lot of regulation and they don't have to have a license. What a real estate wholesaler does, okay? A real estate wholesaler will come to you and offer you cash for your home. Well, what they'll basically do is explain to you it's not really them that's going to buy the property. They're going to put your home under contract and they're going to say, we'll pay you $250 for your home. We're going to close in 90 days and we need a 45-day period. They're going to ask for these longer timelines because they don't have the money to buy your house, or they really don't want to buy your house. And secondly, they're basically trying to take the offer that you've accepted and sell the paper to someone else. Okay. Now, the reason I say a scam isn't because a lot of them aren't, but because a lot of people don't read the contract. And then they feel duped because they didn't know that that person really had no intention and wasn't going to close on their property. Some ways you can avoid tying up your property into a wholesale deal that lasts a really long time: ask for a bigger deposit. Okay. A lot of wholesalers want to put up a small dollar amount. They don't want the risk. Okay. They don't want to tie up their money. All right. Read your contract. Read it and ask questions before you sign it. Okay. Those are two things that can avoid you tying your property up into a wholesale deal where that person isn't going to buy it, and then you eat up a bunch of days on market when they don't find an end buyer. A second way you can avoid the wholesale game is you can ask a real estate agent or a lawyer to look at the contract. You can ask for some time to have the contract looked at. All right. If the person putting your home under contract wants to assign the contract, there's a portion of the contract that says assignability. If they want to assign the contract, they're not really buying your house. They're buying the contract so they can sell the contract to somebody else. You want that box to be unassignable, okay, not assignable. They're a real legitimate buyer. Unless, of course, they say something like, we want it to be assignable, but only to an entity in which we own. So I have done that before because I didn't know which entity was going to end up owning it. Some of the hedge funds will change LLCs. Some of those things are okay. But if someone just wants a bare assignability clause, it's a sign they're likely a wholesaler. Last but not least, avoid tying your property up for long periods of time. Make those periods shorter. Say, look, I'll give you 10 days. Probably not losing a lot over 10 days, or I'll give you a few weeks. But again, homeowners call those scams. They're not always scams. A lot of times it's the homeowner's fault because the homeowner didn't read the contract. Again, I'm going to repeat this. I cannot tell you how many times we have people call our office and say, I'm under contract with this buyer. Well, he's not really a buyer because he's never going to close on your home. He doesn't own any property in the county, never has closed on any property in the county under that entity. He's wholesaling your property. And, you just didn't read the contract. So read the contract. Another real estate scam. So we've got the wholesaler one, got the rental one, and then another really common real estate scam relates to wire transfers, escrow deposits, funds for closing. Always call the title company and verify the wiring transfer instruction. Here's what happens. Okay. Contract the MLS, and they see that a property went pending, and somehow they hack into a real estate agent's email. Somehow they get your email one way or another, and they send you a spoof email trying to pose as the real estate agent, okay, saying, here are your wiring instructions. Well, first off, real estate agents don't and should not be ever sending wire instructions. Those come directly from a title company or an attorney. And when they come via email, call to verify, okay? Do not send wires unless you have called the phone number for the title company or the attorney and verbally verified the wiring instructions. I am an owner of a title company. I cannot tell you how often we have to deal with this. And I personally buy a lot of real estate, and I know the wiring instructions. They change every few months because title companies change banks, but I call and verify, hey, look, is this still the wiring instructions? Is this still it? Is this, is it ending in this number? I still do that today. So whether it's a deposit for a property, whether it's the proceeds for closing, whether it's your down payment, it's a lot of money. Double verify the wire transfer instructions before you send out the money. So those are the most common real estate scams today. Hopefully those have helped you miss out on, some of the scams going on. Last but not least, here's another one of the common real estate scams that we are going to see post-hurricane. Storms that did massive damage to homes, and the people that renovated them didn't actually do certain work. Now look, there is no question there's going to be a lot of unpermitted work completed because of the storms. The reality is that the permit organizations were buried, they were behind, and people needed to get work done so that additional damage didn't happen. Things like, let's just use an example. There's an open hole in a roof and it's raining. You kind of can't really wait on a permit to fix that. You got to fix that pretty fast. So nonetheless, because of the storms, there's going to be unpermitted work. And of course, that can always be scrutinized and looked into more. However, that doesn't always symbolize that corners were cut or work wasn't done properly. I'm just not a big supporter of the government in terms of believing that they even know what they're doing most of the time. The idea that permit work checks off a higher quality box, I don't align with that personally. I think it's simply a lot of people opt to avoid the hassles of dealing with the government for a variety of reasons. But where you have to worry about it right now is, did they remove the baseboards? Did they really replace the drywall? Did they really cut it out? Is there mold behind there? So those are things like, did they actually do that stuff? Because we're seeing inspections now where people are popping off baseboards and there's mold behind it because they didn't even replace the baseboards. They aired it out and put some fans on it and then didn't even actually remedy anything, but they made it smell good, they made it look good, and later on it's going to be a big mold problem for somebody. So if you're buying a home that was flooded and it's been renovated, double check everything, be extra scrutinizing. And sometimes it isn't necessarily the homeowner that cut corners. Sometimes it's the contractor. Sometimes it's who they hired cut corners. So it isn't always the homeowner's fault. Sometimes they may not, zero intent to scam anyone, but the contractor pocketed money, didn't do the drywall, put some cuts in it, made people think they did it, aired it out, thought, it'll be okay. And years will go by and then eventually it's a mold problem. So be extra scrutinizing to make sure you don't get scammed by somebody that says they did work that they didn't do on a property that was renovated. So hopefully that's helpful for you. And again, scrutinize the stuff that didn't have permits. It's not an actual always indication that something wasn't done right. There are plenty of times people do stuff not permitted that was, from a construction standpoint, was done properly. They just simply wanted to avoid the government being in their business. They wanted to avoid the hassles of it. And certainly maybe they wanted to avoid the tax that they didn't like paying for whatever it is the government in whatever municipality charges you. So all those things relevant, but you need to do your due diligence, do your inspections, make sure you're happy. And of course, also verify what impact that has on insurance, because sometimes it can, especially if it's like an addition. All those things can matter, but extra scrutiny on the homes that were flooded and needed renovation that are now supposedly turnkey.